Hello grade 8s, this is Mr. Miller and welcome to lesson 6.3 on multiplying proper fractions. So first, let's fill in some blanks to get the idea of how this multiplication of proper fractions can be done. So first of all, when you are looking to fold to show how to do 1/2 times 2/3, first of all, you would fold the paper into thirds horizontally, and then into halves vertically. So if you had another multiplication to do, such as 3/4 times 2/3, then you could draw line segments, just like with folding paper, to show the quarters horizontally, for instance, and then the thirds vertically. Now, when you're doing the product of two proper fractions, then it is going to be smaller than either of the fractions. And that is because, for instance, when you're doing 1/2 of 2/3, 1/2 times 2/3, 1/2 of 2 is 1, you'd get 1/3. Well, that's smaller than 2/3. And the 1/3 is also smaller than the 1/2, because if you take 1/2 of 3, it would be 1.5. You can see when you multiply something like 1/2 times 2/3, you get a product of 1/3, and that's going to be smaller than both of the factors. So now when you're estimating the product of two proper fractions, first you decide if each of the fractions is closer to 0 or 1/2 or to 1, and then you multiply those. But generally speaking, when we're multiplying fractions, what we do is we multiply the numerator by the numerator, and we multiply the denominator by the denominator. So now let's look at how we can determine each of these products using the rectangles below. So I'm just going to zoom in on this particular area and focus in on just that. And now the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some vertical lines to split up the first rectangle into thirds vertically and also thirds horizontally. So now this may not be perfect, but we'll try to do it reasonably close to breaking it up into thirds. So let's say we get a third here, a third here. Again, it's not gonna be perfect, but it'll be good enough for the purposes of this lesson. Let's take a look at splitting up into thirds this way as well. Now we are doing 1/3 times 1/3 here. So we would like to represent the first 1/3. So I'm going to represent this 1/3 here just by shading in this area. All right. Now we are going to show the other 1/3 here by shading horizontally. 1 out of 3 of the rows here. So now when I do this, you can see that these two areas overlap, and that's what our product is. So, and you can see that that's turned up really nicely in green. This area right here is our product. And it is equal to 1/9. And that is the area that we have shaded here in green. All right, so we're going to take a look at one more example of the same kind of thing. We're going to show 2/3 times 1/4. So I'm going to divide into 3 columns. So just like we did with the last one. And we're looking to shade 2 out of 3 of those columns. So I'll just do that in yellow. Beautiful. All right, so what I've just shaded in there in yellow is the 2/3, and now we would like to do 1/4. So, and I'll do that shading in green, but first off I need to make 4 rows here. So let's split this in half first of all, and then we'll split each one of those into half. Okay, and I'm going to shade in 1 out of 4 of those rows. Okay, and there we go. So you can see right here the overlap. This is our product. And so that product is 2 out of the 12. So again, there are 2 shaded in. Oops, now I'm sorry, I've done my shading wrong here. So the product was in green, and this should actually be shaded in blue. So the part that was shaded in blue was 1/4, and the product was in green. And of course, yellow and blue makes green, right? So it makes sense now. So we can get this product using the diagrams, obviously, but you can also recognize that basically what's happening, the way that we are getting these, the numerator and denominator, note that this is 1 times 1, and that this denominator here is 3 times 3. So we really could just do numerator times numerator to get the numerator of the product, and denominator times denominator to get the product's denominator. So again, this is just 2 times 1, and this here is just 3 times 4. And in this particular case, we can reduce this to lowest terms by dividing both the top, oops, sorry, that looks like a plus sign now, dividing the top and the bottom by 2. That will reduce it to 1/6. And this is our answer in lowest terms. So now if we move on to the next page, we'll get a look at what is our next example. So let's just zoom in on this area here, lock it in. All right, so for each of these questions, we'd like to estimate and then calculate the product, and we'd like to show our work expressing the final answer in lowest terms. So for the estimate part, what we're going to do is we're going to take each fraction and express it as either 0, a half, or 1. So looking at 2/3, 2/3 is approximately equal to a half. So if you're looking at 2/3 on the number line, 2/3 is 0.6 repeated. That is pretty darn close to 0.5, which would be a half. It's a lot closer than it is to 1. But of course we did some rounding down. So for 3/4 it would maybe make sense to do some rounding up. So we're going to take 3/4 and we're going to write it as approximately equal to 1. So now if we multiply those two things, we get a product of 1/2. So that is how you do the estimate. Now to do the calculate version of this, and let me just zoom in on this a little bit more so it's a little bit easier for you to see. We're doing 2/3 times 3/4. Okay, so 2/3 times 3/4. And you can do numerator times numerator, so 2 times 3 is 6, and 3 times 4 is 12. And you can divide the top and the bottom by 6 to reduce it to lowest terms. That would give you 1/2. And it actually matches our estimate exactly. Now, there is another way to go with this. To do the multiplication a little bit more simply, here is my suggestion to you. Let's take that 2/3 times 3/4, and let's recognize the fact that we are going to be simplifying this to lowest terms. We may as well do it from the beginning. So for instance, we knew here that we had divided the top and the bottom by 6. In 6 there's a factor of 2 in there, and we could have divided out this factor of 2 from the top here and the bottom there right away. We can also divide the top here with the bottom there by 3. Because ultimately the 2 and the 3 will be combined into the same numerator, and the factor of 3 and 4 will be combined into the same denominator. So you don't necessarily just have to simplify a fraction top and bottom here and top and bottom there, but we can take a factor from the top here and a factor from the bottom there and simplify those with each other. And that's what I'm doing here. So I've divided the 2 by 2 to get 1, divided the 4 by 2 to get 2, divided the 3 by 3 to get 1, divided the 3 by 3 to get 1. Now, check out the multiplication that I have to do. I have to do 1 times 1 equals 1, and 1 times 2 equals 2. So the nice thing about this is that we've got much smaller numbers to multiply. 1 times 1 equals 1, rather than having to do 2 times 3. And I know 2 times 3 isn't exactly a huge product to work out, but and 1 times 2 is 2 as opposed to 3 times 4 is 12. So the first thing that's nice about this is that you're multiplying smaller numbers when you simplify first. Second nice thing is that you already have your answer in lowest terms. There's no need to go on and figure out, like we had to do here, reducing that to lowest terms. I mean, we still get the same answer, but I think it's gotten in a little bit of an easier way. So I would definitely recommend that for you. All right, now let's take a look at what is next here. In the next example, we have 1/3 times 4/5. So let's look at that. If we want to do 1/3 times 4/5, what we may want to do is say that the 1/3, which is 0.3 repeated, it's approximately 1/2. 1/2 is a much easier number to multiply than 1/3. And 4/5, well, it's pretty close to 1. So again, we could multiply these two and say that the product is approximately 1/2. I'm not saying it's exactly that, but approximately. Now, if we want to do this exactly, then what we would need to do is this. We'd do 1/3 times 4/5, and we would do the 1 times 4, which is 4, and we'd do the 3 times 5, which is 15, and so our product is 4/15. Now, we didn't get an exact match for what we had in our estimate, so notice how in the last example we had an exact match between the estimate and the calculate. We didn't get that here. We had 1/2, and here we have 4/15. 1/2 of 15 would be 7.5. So you can see that this actual answer is lower than that. But as an estimate, it's close. It doesn't have to be exact. All right, so we're on to our last example here. In this section, we're doing 5/8 times 1/4. So doing 5/8 times 1/4, we would say that 5/8 is approximately 1/2. 4/8 is actually 1/2. And 1/4, now I've rounded 5/8 down to 1/2. 1/4 I should round up to approximately 1/2. On top of that, if you went down to 0, because I know 1/4 is halfway between 0 and 1/2, but if we went down to 0, multiplying by 0 makes the whole thing 0, and that's just going to be way off. So 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4, and this is our estimate. Okay, so now let's go on to the calculate part. Over here, we'll just do that. So we're doing 5/8 times 1/4. So in doing 5/8 times 1/4, there's no simplification that can be done. We're simply doing 5 times 1, which is equal to 5. And we're doing 8 times 4, which is simply 32. And here's our product. So now let's take a look at a problem-solving situation that says that, for this, number 4, that in Mr. Sari's grade 8 class, 3/8 of students play hockey. Of these students, 1/3 are on a rep team. What fraction of the students in Mr. Sari's class are on a rep team? I'm going to show our work. So it is 1/3 of the 3/8. And so we can do some simplification, dividing this by 3 and that by 3. We get 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 8 is 8. And so the answer is 1/8. So just answering in sentence format here, we've got 1/8 of Mr. Sari's class plays rep hockey. And that's it. So I hope you're able to understand that, and you can go on now to pick your 8 questions from section 6.3. Thanks for watching this video, and have a great day.